Phillies to drop their final series heading into the All-Star break. We're going to talk about the games, the break. We've got to get into the previewing the home run derby and so much more with a special guest joining us, Chase Ford from the MLB Central Twitter account. Stay tuned. All that's coming up here on PHLY Phillies. It was not the weekend that we wanted to end the first half of the regular season, but the Phillies head into the All-Star break, and now we got to look ahead at all the excitement around the draft, the futures game, the All-Star break, that what it brings. So welcome and happy Monday. We've got Bree Savarino, our producer, Tyler Zulli back in action, myself, Renee Washington. Special guest joining us today, Chase Ford, who runs the MLB Central account on Twitter, who does a phenomenal job covering the prospects and all of the youth of baseball and the future of baseball. So excited to have him on today. We'll have to recap the weekend that was. It was not a great weekend at all. Super wacky, bad weather, bad baseball. Some records made in all the wrong ways and a lot to take away in a sense of like, let it go. It's over. It happened. Yeah. It's over, Tyler.
So it's funny that you say that. I just spent 4 days in Disney and I heard let it go about 7 million times. So it's really apropos to come back to saying exactly that. Listen,
I did that just for you. It was coming off of your Disney trip.
It was a 3-day weekend of weird baseball, and people are going to look at the opponent and go, "The A's? What are we doing here?" But listen, I'm like washing the slate clean on this weekend. Mm-hmm. I'm just almost to the point where pretending it didn't happen. They didn't get swept. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was a good series because it was terrible baseball, especially yesterday, and things just snowballed out of hand really, really quickly. Yes. But I think that you and I and every Phillies fan can probably just go, it's All-Star break week. Let's move on. Pittsburgh on Friday.
Exactly. So Provolone and John, we've got Chris Lemmer. Happy Monday. Chris Lemmer, you were first in the chat. I know Casper was making a note. Yes. A great first half. Tyler's in the chair. Jamie is away for the week, actually. So Tyler's going to be hosting with me all week. We get to hang. And thank you, K-Red, for the top compliment. Appreciate that. As we are talking through the first half of this season, first of all, can we all just take a moment to process that we are talking through the first half of the season? It is already July 15th on the dot. And here we are. It happened so fast.
Crazy how quickly
I think we blinked. It feels like just yesterday we were down at spring training. Even I'll go further back to us doing like our off-season grades and previews and all these predictions and things. And here we are, guys. Here we are. So for that reason alone, perspective of how fast this flew by, that the Phillies set a franchise record winning 62 games. So although they dropped 2 of the last 3 to the A's, and yes, they swept the Dodgers, which had everybody on their high horse. We were all feeling great after that series. You turn around, you get beat by the A's, and you don't get just beat. They opened up a can of whoop ass. Like, it was really bad baseball. But for anybody that has been following our show especially and continuing to follow the Phillies closely, you know that this is not anything indicative of the talent of this team. Sunday's game alone, you had Orion Kirkering as your opener. You had Michael Mercado out there, who I don't know, his days are numbered. You had a piecemeal bullpen game. That was just not good. You ended the game with Garrett Stubbs on the mound throwing a grand slam. Like, this is the reality of what yesterday was. And although everybody can look at Ranger Suarez, we'll get into him in his injury update, his struggles, the offensive struggles. Let's be honest. These guys were already on All-Star break. And I told Jamie this on Friday because he was hours away from his trip. And you're coming off of a trip. We all know when you are about to go away for a little while and you know a break is coming, that last day you are mentally not there.
Oh, you checked out.
Physically you are
Big
there,
time.
but mentally you are already
Big
on vacation. Time. You're already out. The Phillies were already on All-Star break as of like once they swept the Dodgers, that was it. I think that was their, for them, that was the big focus. The guys talked about it. Brandon Marsh and different guys were mentioning how hyped and locked in they were to be able to beat the Dodgers. Yeah. And then against the A's, it was like, oh well. Like, not that they intentionally lost, but it was more of, let's just go out, get a bunch of guys opportunities, finish out the break, go into the break with 62 wins.
Yeah, you brought up Michael Mercado, and I think that the first start had us excited because I thought there was a lot of poise. I thought there was a lot of success with the command. We talked about the cutter at length. I thought it was really good. The last two appearances, it just seems like he's not missing any bats. It seems like he's really over the heart of the plate. But regardless of a 18-run drubbing and a series loss to a bad Oakland team, do you know there's one team in baseball with 60 wins? It's the Phillies. Do you know there's one team in baseball that currently holds more than an 8-game lead in their division? It's the Phillies. There's one team in baseball that currently has a plus 100 run differential. Excuse me. There's two teams in baseball that currently have a plus 100 run differential. It's the Phillies and the Yankees.
Yep.
Regardless of a 5-5 last 10, regardless of the fact that you really had a weird and wacky weekend against the Oakland A's, I think you're right. Your foot was kind of out the door. You're a little bit checked out. You are 62-34. You are 28 games above 500. There are teams that are 28 games back in their division. The Marlins are 29 back in the National League East. The Chicago White Sox might become the worst team in baseball when all is said and done, are 32.5 games back of a really good Cleveland team. You put things into perspective after a weird and wild and, kind of, you could almost call it like a stupid weekend.
Yeah.
This team is in really great shape.
The truth of the matter is, what we're looking at, again, is the Phillies dealing with a number of injuries, a number of issues. We all saw Ranger Suarez struggle on the mound on Friday. We talked about it in our postgame show. Yep. Then we find out later, by no surprise, that Ranger Suarez has been dealing with back issues. Him and Zach Wheeler both dealing with back issues. Zach has back spasms. Ranger has back issues. I'll get into the official injury update. You look forward to that game. Tyler Phillips pitched. We knew that was going to be an exciting game because as a Bishop Eustis grad, we knew the excitement that it would bring of being a local guy, getting his first official start, all the things that would help kind of boost the Phillies. And it did. Sunday, you look at the pitching, as you mentioned with Michael Mercado, the numbers to have you give up in the 4th, 5th, and 6th innings, 3 home runs. 2 of them are 2-run homers. He looked great on July 2nd, but ever since has struggled. We're talking about a guy that was brought in to replace your 5th. Taijuan Walker goes down, Spencer Turnbull goes down.
For another guy who replaced your 5th.
Correct. Like, we're not even talking about your backup. We're not talking about Spencer Turnbull struggling. We're talking about Michael Mercado, who was brought in to replace the replacement. This is not someone that you're going to see every day. In fact, I don't even know how many days we'll see him after the All Star break, depending on how long it takes for Taijuan to get back from his blister and for Spencer Turnbull to come back. So, yes, he allowed 5 runs, put 8 on base against Atlanta. Then we saw him again struggle against the A's. This is Michael Mercado. We're complaining and focused on a loss that was led by Michael Mercado. From that moment, the whole game changes. Not to mention, as you said, with the success of the team, I actually pulled some numbers because with having 62 wins, as you mentioned, and the next closest team in the NL being the Dodgers with 56 wins, as you also alluded to, the next team overall around the league, the Orioles and the Yankees each have 58 wins as well as the Guardians. No one else has more than 56 wins in Major League Baseball.
Sure.
So yes, the Phillies had an awful ending to the first half of the season, but I think they've also afforded themselves that chance, that they didn't have any pressure going into it. You're injured, you're banged up. Go into this just to get out. Like, get in to get out so you can head into the break and now have a chance to have the excitement of having 8 guys invited to the All-Star break. The rotation alone, an Major League best 3.22 ERA with an 11.3 WAR. The offense is top in a number of categories. 4th in runs, 3rd in batting average. The bullpen, guys, which was initially 3rd, they have dropped a little bit to 13th after, of course, he gave up 18 runs and have a really bad weekend against A's. That will drop that ERA from a 3.32 ERA. They're top in the league defensively, 8th with 11 outs above average. And then again, with 62 wins, a franchise record. And the Phillies have put themselves in categories. There's not a lot of teams that even have had more than 60 wins. I had it on my phone. I'm going to find it really quickly. The amount of teams that even headed into the All-Star break, they were saying this on the broadcast. You had the Phillies in this season with 62 wins, okay? The most a team has ever had wins heading into the All-Star break, the Boston Red Sox back in 2018 with 68 wins.
You know what that team did, by the way? That Boston Red Sox team? They won the World Series.
Yes. 1969, the Baltimore Orioles had 65 wins. In 2018 and 2022, the Houston Astros had 64 wins in 2018. The Yankees had 64 wins in 2022. In 2001, Seattle had 63 wins. And the Dodgers had 63 wins in 1973 and 1974. To have the Phillies in conversation, I know there's another World Series champ in there also.
So there's the 1969 Baltimore Orioles were World Series runners. They lost to the Mets in '69. That Mets team that went on an immaculate run. The 73 Dodgers and 74 Dodgers were, kind of a juggernaut. You saw later down the line, the 76 Dodgers gave the Phillies problems.
Yep.
The recurring theme on all of these, well, with the exception of the 01 Mariners team, which was just like, the one of the greatest regular season teams of all time. They happened to run into the Yankees.
They didn't even have.
They ran into the Yankees.
They didn't even have over 60 wins heading into the All-Star break.
That team didn't.
They're not on the list. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, they are. 63.
So,
my bad. I can read.
The teams that you're talking about are either World Series winners, got to the World Series, or are regular season darlings who end up breaking the record for most wins in a regular season. And again, that Mariners team just kind of ran into a Yankees team who was probably better than them, despite the fact that the Mariners had, ridiculous regular season numbers. The point being is you set yourself up for that buffer that you brought up, right? When you lose a series to the Marlins, like you did a couple weeks ago, when you lose a series to the Oakland A's, like you did this week, I said on Monday when John and I were doing the show, if the Phillies go 3-3, would you be content? And John said, not really, because it's Oakland. And, he goes, I really would prefer 4-2. It didn't happen the way we expected.
No, it's still 4-2.
But it's still 4-2, right? Like, if you were to say to me, strip away the series and say the Phillies are going to go 4-2 over the 6-game stretch against the Dodgers and the Oakland A's, I would have been thrilled, especially knowing that Ranger Suarez was struggling a little bit with, we didn't know it was a back injury at the time, especially knowing the fact that you were going to have to either turn to another Michael Mercado start or a Tyler Phillips start, especially knowing the fact that, Bryce Harper was just returning, Kyle Schwarber was just returning. You're still missing JT Realmuto. If you were to say to me, over that 6 games, you were going to go 4-2, it doesn't really matter how it came about. It's odd that you sweep the Dodgers and lose 2 of 3 to the A's, but the outcome is the preferred outcome. You finish 4-2 when you needed to finish 4-2.
Bingo. And that's exactly, I know people are saying that on Twitter as well, of many people going into these final 2 series were expecting 3-3, 4-2, just to be over 500 coming out of it. And the Phillies did that. Now, how they lost was ugly. How they lost was not great. And I think it caught a lot of us by surprise. You had the Phillies who, after sweeping the Dodgers, this was their first series loss since early April against the Reds. They haven't been dropping. The first, how does this work? First series loss since the first, has it been that long? Wait, I just realized that.
Because I know they lost one.
They
lost
May.
one in San Francisco.
It's been a while since they have.
That was the back-to-back where they went on the West Coast trip.
So honestly, they lost to the Braves.
And they lost to Baltimore.
And they lost to Baltimore. Yeah. So when you look at how many losses that they've had, it hasn't been a lot. And they haven't they had a streak at one point. Early April, that was their streak where they were dropping back-to-back series. That has come to an end. They have actually been phenomenal in responding. Yeah. And to see them have, a really lackluster weekend, I think for a lot of people were like, I'm already hitting the panic button. Why? Injuries we knew were going to happen. Hitting a wall we knew was going to happen. And so if this is when it happens, right before the All-Star break, a chance to go away, regroup. You've got 8 guys headed to Texas. The vibes are high from even that excitement of guys getting their first trip to the All-Star break. This is the perfect time for that. Regroup, take some time off, get healthy. And so there's no reason to panic, guys. They're still in a great position. As you mentioned, the lead against, even in the NL with the Dodgers having 56 wins, the Phillies have set themselves up nicely to have time to take off. It's like when you jump ahead, you take advantage early on with the early on success and winning and the numbers that they've been putting out there, they were bound to have some sort of a drop off at some point. If this is that drop off, I'm okay with that, because to your point about that 2001 Seattle team, how many teams have you seen that have been almost perfect throughout the season, don't have really any adversity, any injuries, and then get to the playoffs and now they're struggling, now they're hitting a wall, now they're gassed? I'd rather them have that struggle now when you still have plenty of baseball left, plenty of time to get healthy and get yourself now in the second half of the season really pushing to be a World Series champion.
So just by doing some quick math, the coming off of losses this year, the Phillies, now they'll see what happens on Friday against Pittsburgh to talk about this number. I believe the Phillies are 19-8 coming off of losses in the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. So since the opening series loss to the Braves, where they lost the first two, they are 19-8 coming off of losses.
They respond
in the first half. Like, this team so infrequently loses consecutive games. So they lost consecutive games in Cincinnati in April, and it was pretty bad. I mean, it was 8-1, 7-4. It wasn't particularly close. They lost back-to-back games against San Francisco. In fact, they lost 3 in a row. They dropped the last game in Colorado, and they lost 2 in a row against San Francisco. They lost 2 straight against Boston. They lost 2 straight against Baltimore. They lost 2 straight between the Padres and the Diamondbacks, and they lost 2 straight against the Braves earlier this month. This team doesn't lose consecutive games frequently.
No.
So when you set yourself up, even coming off of a loss, when you set yourself up to respond the way that they have, it makes things significantly easier, because we've seen a trend with this team where they've won a lot of first games of series.
Oh, yeah.
So even if you drop game 2, the comfortability to be able to say, this is a tied series, we have an opportunity on a Sunday or a Wednesday or a Thursday or whatever the case may be to win this series.
Oh, yeah.
I feel particularly strong more times than not, is even with what's kind of become a little bit of a depleted starting rotation. And I don't mean depleted in terms of like they're missing guys, but Ranger's been banged up, Wheeler's banged up. Your 5th spot in your rotation has kind of been a rotating door. It's been kind of carousel, if you will. The fact that this team rarely loses consecutive games, let alone loses 3 straight games, is really paramount to their success.
Exactly. And there were a lot of firsts that we saw this past weekend, unfortunately, against the Phillies. The A's, listen, when the A's are good, they are weirdly good when they're good. Like, it's one extreme or the other. They have scored 18 or more runs 3 times in a game this season. Nobody else across the league has accomplished that feat. They also, of course, had those 7 home runs, which is the franchise record is 9, which happened versus Cincinnati back in 1999. And so there are some firsts that the Phillies haven't allowed that many. They've allowed 8 home runs 3 times. They haven't allowed more than that, except for that one time, 9 back in September 1999. A lot of firsts that we saw from this team, very unconventional. We've got to get into the injury updates, of course, as well as just talking about some other final nuggets around the weekend. But first things first, when it's game time, guys, we know what this team is going to be able to do. There's no worry when it comes down to game time. When it counts most, the Phillies are always ready, and you can always be ready with the Game Time app. The Game Time app allows you to get those last-minute flash deals, great prices, low tickets prices, so that when you're heading to that concert, the game, the comedy show, whatever it is you're looking to go to, that live event, the Game Time app has all the great deals that you need to make it seamless and simple to get in and have some fun. It's tough buying tickets. You have to figure out how much money do we want to spend? Where are our seats located? What view do we want? Well, with the Game Time app, they have all that for you. You can check out a nice live picture of your seat so you have a view of where you're going to be located, know where the field is going to be, the stage, the court, have an idea where you and your friends are going to be sitting. And also you have the ease of knowing your tickets are right on your phone. I have at times struggled myself. Back in the day, we used to print out tickets and you'd be fumbling in your bag for them. Some people still do that. I know some of us also have the tickets on our phone. You have to log in. You've got to pull it up. Not with the Game Time app. It's right there for you. You don't have to worry about having laggy Wi-Fi slowing you down to get in the door. Also, I've done that myself. Because with the Game Time app, you get a chance to pick out those seats, get a view of your seats, and then easily get in to the ballpark when you're headed out to Citizens Bank Park, for example. So as we are headed into the All Star break, we've got a lot of baseball ahead of us, and you want to make sure you're prepared for the second half of the season. It starts Friday against Pittsburgh. It's a lot of baseball ahead as we hopefully can boost this team into a great postseason run. And so you guys want to make sure that you're there, loud, having fun, cheering on this group. It's been sellout crowds every game, whether on the road or home, and that can continue with the Game Time app. So today, browse through the Game Time app, get those last-minute ticket deals. Easy to find any Major League Baseball ticket for every kind of event in your area. With the Game Time app today, you can take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY, which gets you $20 off your purchase. It's already great prices, and you get to save even more. We love savings. So again, terms may apply, but download the app, create that account, use that code PHLY, get $20 off. And with the Game Time app, get those last-minute tickets and lowest price guaranteed.
Yeah, you know, when you're buying those tickets, because not all the time you're not always going to Citizens Bank Park. Sometimes you're hitting the road to travel with the Phils because, Renee, I don't know if you've noticed recently, a lot of Phillies fans at a lot of ballparks. Yeah. And if you are traveling with the Phillies to an away game, it will help you and want help kind of staying on top of your financing. That's where you're going to get the TrueMark Financial mobile app. The mobile app allows you to see your account and access it anywhere at any time. You can easily check your balance. You can view your transactions. You know, and if you're on the road and you realize, hey, I'm maybe spending a couple more dollars than I want to, you can make transfers in between your accounts. You can also pay your bills because, listen, I was away this weekend and I got home at 2 o'clock in the morning yesterday and I realized, oh no, I forgot to pay one of my student loans. And the TrueMark Financial mobile app would have helped me just be able to pay my bill right from the airport or from the hotel or whatever the case may have been. I could have done it from the top of Space Mountain if I wanted to. And you have so much convenience with this mobile app. Plus, you can add all of your cards to your mobile wallet for easy in-store or online payment. The tap option on paying your bills nowadays or paying at the store is so much easier. I know it takes 2 more seconds to insert your card or swipe your card, but the tap option is just so much better. And now that I'm turning the page on my vacation, my wife and I are starting trying to get into the home buying process. And by the way, it's really, really hard, but TrueMark Financial will be able to help you. They have mortgage specialists who can offer you guidance on loan options and terms. They'll also help you assess your finances and score your credit score to determine your borrowing capacity because, friends, you don't want to go over what you're able to spend. Houses are expensive. Keep your costs low with the TrueMark Financial mobile app. TrueMark Financial is a federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit truemark.com/PHLY.
All right, let's get into the final nuggets of information before we move along and have our special guest, Chase Ford, joining us. Obviously, yesterday was not great when you look at the fact that Michael Mercado gave up 3 home runs, Dominguez gave up a pair, Jose Ruiz gave up 2, Garrett Stubbs gave up a grand slam. The numbers were not good. We saw some...
You got any good news?
I do, actually. I'm going to get to the good. Brent Rooker, who we saw hit 2 home runs into Ashburn Alley, also was his shot. I know was mentioned in the chat was Mason Miller auditioning for the Phillies. Mason Miller traveled down with the Phillies All Stars on their private jet to Arlington, Texas. Did not know them. I know Taryn Hatcher was talking about in the broadcast. Did not know any of them, but hopefully now he knows them pretty well and wants to become a Philly. Brent Rooker, I don't know about him though. Still, we talked about it Friday as a DH and a guy that defensively is not good. That's not a great addition for the Phillies. It's actually like a step back. You don't need another slow left fielder, but you could use a guy that hit 2 home runs. When you look at those home runs, 450 feet, 452 feet on the other. He was 6 for 11, a double, and 4 RBIs on the weekend, and just the 7th player in the 10 years of StatCast tracking to hit multiple 450-foot plus homers in the same game. Yeah, I mean, that offensive audition was nice.
So, 2 things. First and foremost, the A's are going to A again.
Correct.
Just an embarrassing franchise who will not charter a flight for their All-Stars.
And sends them with another team.
And this is the 2nd year in a row they did that. I believe when, maybe it was 2 out of 3 years, because I believe
they did it
when
before.
Frankie Montas was their only, so it must have been 3 years ago, because I believe he was traded. Whatever year he was traded, he was an All-Star.
But they did it.
He ended up having to hitch a ride with another team, and I just don't understand. I understand that this organization is moving and they don't make a lot of money, but you just continue to flounder on every opportunity to just get some goodwill, amongst the fans. Hey, I'm John Fisher. I know that everybody hates me right now, but at least let me send my guys in first class to the All-Star game. No, you got to ride with the Phils. To your Brent Rooker point. He mashes. Absolutely mashes. And you're right. The defensive liability is certainly there. He has not played much of the field. I don't know what the last day he has been. He had been in the field. He's been DHing pretty primarily for the A's. I am still on the Taylor Ward train. I think Taylor Ward is the best option for this team. That doesn't include trading your entire farm system away. Like, I know that Jamie is probably somewhere on the road right now beating the drum for Luis Robert, and I'm never going to take it away from him because it's a moot point. But to me, Taylor Ward is still the guy that I would be targeting. Rooker is, if you want pop in, I would imagine he would probably slide into the 5 spot in this lineup. I think at least until JT gets back, and then maybe he hits 6th, or I don't know. There's a lot of different things that you could, a lot of plausible outcomes that you could do with this lineup that would be really fun to watch. He's defensively a liability. I'm not quite sure he would provide any semblance of an upgrade. And then on top of that, your other option is Kyle Schwarber plays left field on occasion, and I don't particularly want that either. If you're looking strictly for the bat, Brent Rooker is probably the guy that you're going to look for. If you're looking for a little bit more flexibility, Taylor Ward is a guy that I really like. I know somebody in the chat brought up Lane Thomas. I've been on a Lane Thomas fan for a long time. I am not sure the timeline of the Nationals because they're starting to put things together. They called up James Wood. CJ Abrams is clearly, I know he's defensively struggled at times this year, but he's clearly an offensive presence. They're starting to put a pitching staff together. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Had some good wins too, actually.
That trade with the Padres where you sent Juan Soto to the Padres, I understand it's really hard to recoup what Juan Soto brings to you. The Nationals did a really good job of acquiring a lot of young talent that, for the most part, has panned out. Mackenzie Gore is a major league pitcher. CJ Abrams is an everyday shortstop. James Wood is now in the major leagues and looking to make a name for himself. Even if it's just those 3 guys, you've done a pretty good job of recouping what you lose. Like, I'm going to use the term from Moneyball, in the aggregate, when you lose Juan Soto. Lane Thomas, I'm not sure how he fits the timeline anymore. He's a little bit older than the other guys. I think he has value to the Nationals, though. I'm not entirely sure they're going to end up moving him. I think we'll have a better understanding in a couple weeks. I know they've already sent it was Hunter Harvey. They moved to Kansas City. I think we'll have a better understanding of what they're going to do with their position players in a couple weeks.
And I think this is a great week because the trade deadline, of course, with July 30th coming up very soon, we'll be able to start to kind of formulate what possible trades really make sense for the Phillies. Personally, I'm all for versatility, youth, a ready-now player, and a guy that's going to give you good fielding, but good at bats also. Someone like Brent Rooker who can, as you mentioned, mash balls. That doesn't help you out in the left field. We already have a guy that can knock the ball at the ballpark and get leadoff home runs in Kyle Schwarber. You need someone that can give you something defensively. That's why we got rid of Whit Merrifield. So you need some more to add to the offensive production. We'll get into some of the offensive production of the Phillies. But first, we have a special guest getting ready to join us in a moment, Tyler. Because obviously this weekend's been more than just the frustrations of the Phillies. We've also been able to get into all the excitement of the future of the game. But I'd love for you to tell us about a nice, refreshing drink to enjoy all this excitement with.
I think that obviously it's like 7 million degrees out this summer, and whether you're down the shore, you're at the mountains, you're just hanging out at home. I see. I think somebody's cooking an egg on the asphalt, the blacktop outside. It's been a wild summer, and it's just getting hotter and hotter. So if you want a cool, crisp, refreshing beverage for you to take just about anywhere, because you can find it anywhere, that, of course, is with our friends over at Miller Lite. Now, the beauty of Miller Lite is it's been around since the 70s, and it hasn't changed so many things about the everything, life, pop culture, the cars we drive, the houses we buy. Everything has changed over the last 50 years. One of the things that has not is Miller Lite. I get Miller Lite basically every time I hit the golf course. I know we had our golf outing this weekend. Bree was explaining how her group played, and there was apparently a group that shot 20 under. Okay, guys, sure. I believe you. I wasn't there, but I'll take your word for it. And I know at our outing, you could get a cool, crisp, refreshing Miller Lite because you can get Miller Lite delivered to your door. You can get it. You can pick it up in just about any store. Miller Lite keeps it simple. It has undebatable quality, great taste. And by the way, only 96 calories. And when you're out in the sun or you're spending the day at the pool or whatever the case may be, you don't want to get all full on some of the heavier beers. Miller Lite has you covered with an everyday beer that you can drink. You don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling, and it tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Phils, or you can find it, as I said, pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces, fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
I heard you say refreshing, Tyler.
Sure was.
Refreshing drinks? You know who else has refreshing drinks? Our friends over at Rite Aid. Rite Aid's got a refreshery in the sense that they have a whole wide selection of refreshing drinks. It is hot outside. We're in the midst of still a heat wave. And so you want to make sure as you're out enjoying, all the fun of the day. I was rock climbing this weekend. We were watching baseball. We had our golf outing. You were traveling down. You were in Disney. As we're getting out enjoying life and we're outside, as the kids say, you want to make sure that you're staying hydrated too. Well, Rite Aid has a lot of selections, including their coconut water, which I'm a huge fan of some nice coconut water that I have a nice mix because it's gluten-free, non-GMO, less than 1% sugar, fat-free, and has a wide array of essential nutrients. A great way to stay hydrated. Another great way, just water in general. They've got a lot of purified spring, electrolyte, distilled, and alkaline bottled flavored waters as well that you can try at Rite Aid. They also have their refreshing iced tea and lemonade. To me, summer, I always think of a nice glass with a couple ice cubes. It's the SpongeBob reference for sure.
It's definitely SpongeBob. You were just explaining SpongeBob.
I literally just explained SpongeBob. I think of a nice cold lemonade. When you're hot outside, that you're just drinking some nice lemonade and iced tea. They've got sweetened with real sugar, no preservatives. They even have some cold pressed juices, which I love a good smoothie cold pressed juice because it gives you all the fruits and vegetables. So they have various flavors of juices and drinks: pineapple, cranberry apple, strawberry lemonade, and their cold pressed juices as well that are crafted from 100% fruits and veggies, organic, non-GMO, no added sugars, and they're packaged in some really great eco-friendly glass bottles. So this summer, you want to make sure you can enjoy all that's outside or even inside. And with Rite Aid, you can do just that. It's important to stay hydrated, especially during the summer months. So get refreshment even delivered. Rite Aid allows you to deliver when you shop online at riteaid.com/shop. You can get same-day delivery. So from the moment we're having this conversation now, you could go order from Rite Aid and have drinks delivered to your door by the end of today. So take advantage of their same-day delivery. You can buy online, of course, pick up in store to check out their refreshery products over at Rite Aid. All right, well, because this weekend was a lot more than just the frustrations of the Phillies dropping the series finale to the Oakland A's, we also have to get into all the excitement around the MLB Draft, the Futures Game, the inaugural skills event that we saw for the young talent coming through. So with that, let's welcome in a great person that's out doing phenomenal work covering all that is minor league baseball, the prospects, Chase Ford of MILB Central on Twitter, who is thorough, who is consistent, who is pumping out good content. Chase, happy Monday. How are you after this exciting weekend of watching? We're getting to see the excitement of course, the Home Run Derby All-Star Game is still coming up, but the excitement of the young talent that's rising across baseball. How are you after this weekend?
Hey, thank you for having me. I think it's been really good, and the Futures Game with both Crawford and Miller in it was really well.
Yes, definitely. Let's get into that because we saw for the Futures Game, we saw the first time ever the Future Skills Showcase, which was awesome to see. I know Roman Anthony was the overall winner, the number 2 Red Sox prospect, won that inaugural event. But as you mentioned, Aiden Miller, Justin Crawford getting invited to the Futures Game, the first time ever for Aiden, the second time for Justin. And we got to see them in the spotlight a little bit. They shined. They did very well, especially Justin Crawford. We saw him show off his speed. They both showed off their at-bats. What were your takeaways from the way that they played this weekend?
I think they both did really good. And also with Crawford, he had that one diving catch early in the game, which I think really stood out, showing off his defense as well. It was nice, too. They both made it on base. think they both made really well impressions.
So, Chase, I am probably on one end of the spectrum about trading prospects. Every year we talk about untouchable prospects. This year for the Phils, Aiden Miller is one of them. The other one, obviously, is not pitching this year, is Andrew Painter. Every team, every fan base has a group of guys that they say you got to be over the moon to acquire a top-notch type of player. For the Phillies prospect pipeline, who to you are the untouchable prospects this year?
I think Miller and Crawford definitely got to be on it. As you said, Painter, I don't think he's ever been off it. And I think Klassen's got to stay too. I think just with how he's done this season and everything. But I agree. I hate to see some of the guys go like they've done in the past.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely feels like the untouchables. You have to protect them. You look at the talent that they have. Justin Crawford showing off the speed that his dad, of course, showed when he played. We got to see that on display this weekend. Aiden Miller is a great power hitter. The numbers that we've been seeing from them at the minor league level as they continue to progress. And I know you actually even were sharing Justin Crawford gets moved up. They're progressing nicely in the minor league system. What statistically or even in their progression have you seen from them that makes Justin and Aiden two guys that should be untouchables? What have you seen specifically?
Aiden's shown good work, and he got his call up to high A, which shows he's doing everything right. Got the Futures game nod. It shows he's on the right track. And Crawford, he tore it up this month in July especially. He deserved the promotion, and they should keep him for the future.
So
I want to go real quick to, like, in the past, some of the trades, if that's all right.
Yeah,
when we traded for David Robertson, giving up Ben Brown, I hated the trade on the spot right away. And obviously that didn't seem to work out too well as he got hurt in the playoff run. And Brown had a 10-plus strikeout game in the majors this season.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think so, and that's kind of where we've been kind of back and forth with in terms of trading prospects. Obviously, sometimes you end up moving a Ben Brown for a David Robertson, it doesn't work out. Sometimes you move a Kyle Drabeck and you end up acquiring Roy Halladay in the process. It's a funny, fickle situation when you're trading maybes for provens. In terms of kind of talking about maybes, the MLB draft is probably the biggest crapshoot of all drafts. And the Phils take Dante Nori at 27 last night. And I'll be honest with you, I think when you read about you read scouting reports on these kids, it's really just an eye test and how these type of players are going to grow as they get older. Baseline, first and foremost, did you like the selection, and how do you feel specifically about the selection of a high school player as opposed to a college player? Where do you kind of fall on that?
I think it's smart for where the Phillies are at right now. They don't need anyone right away to the majors. And I also like the Griffin Burkholder. I like that pick too. I mean, both the guys, they have really good speed. They have bats. I think it's a good move by the Phillies. And then maybe today they'll go college with the first few picks. Or even if they stick high school, I think there's a lot of good guys out there still.
Yeah. As for anybody that missed it, 27th, the Phillies did pick high school outfielder Dante Nori, a left-handed hitter and batter out of Northville, Michigan. He was the fifth first-round pick made by Brian Barber. I know Barber was speaking about, exactly as you mentioned, Chase. You're not really sure what to expect, but you do know for the Phillies, they don't have to rush. They can allow these kids to be able to develop and be able to take time to just progress in the minor system. So my last question for you, Chase, because you do a phenomenal job with your coverage of all things around prospects in minor league baseball. Tell us a little bit more about MLB Central and how it came to be, because I know in the chat, people are talking through their thoughts on the prospects. You seem like you are an up-and-coming minor league baseball, journalist in what you're doing. How long has this been around? Give us some details for those that are tuning in to learn more about MLB Central.
I started going to Blue Claws games specifically, which is, at the time, it was the low A of the Phillies, and now it's the high A. But going to the games, I interacted with some players, whether it was getting a signed ball or anything. And at the one game, they were playing the West Virginia Power, which is the Mariners affiliate. And I got a home run on video. And after the game, I was able to approach the player because he was in the crowd talking to his parents. and I was able to get the video to him. He got to post it himself. I got to play some video games with him because we stayed in touch, which I found was the coolest thing ever. That guy ended up being Julio Rodriguez, which is pretty neat.
Wow.
That it ended up being a superstar in him. And I just liked the connection. So I started a page to see if I could talk to a few more guys maybe. And it was the off season when I started, November 20th of 2019. So it was fun starting out. Got to talk to a few more guys. Then the first year COVID hit, so it took a while to actually get in the full swing of a season. But after 2 years, that finally happened, and it started growing slower. But the last 2 years especially, it's picked up a lot, and I've gotten to talk to way more guys than I would have ever expected.
I love that. Julio Rodriguez, and you were playing video games and you had a chance. This is the beauty of minor league baseball. It's a great opportunity, exactly as you're talking about, to connect with the players before they become the superstar major league athletes that they are. That now you get to go to the game, see them in person. That is so very cool. Is there anybody from the Phillies pipeline that jumps out at you that you've been able to really connect with? I know you have the picture of you and Orion Kerkering. Is there anybody else that you've really been able to develop that friendship with early on while they were in the minor league system?
For in the majors now, just the other day I went up there and I saw them versus the Athletics, the first game of the series, and I got to talk to Tyler Phillips and Michael Mercado because they were both up from the last time I saw them. And Tyler Phillips especially, what a nice, super nice guy. I'm so happy for him, how well he's doing and all the love he's been getting because he deserves it all. He had really good conversations with him. And then a few other guys that have made it through the system. Johan Rojas, he was at the Blue Claws that I got to see a few times, and he follows and supports me. And Garrett Stubbs, I saw the first game I went to at the Phillies, and he was nice enough to follow and check out the account. So there's a few guys. It's coming along pretty well as more guys move up, especially the athletic side, but we're focusing on the Phillies.
Well, I know I said last question, and I now have one more thing that I do want to add to it, because Casper the Ghost is saying how he's been following you on Instagram for a while and did not realize how young you are. As you mentioned, you started back in 2019. Now, you might have a really good skincare routine and eat well and stay hydrated, and maybe that's the trick, but I feel like you are a little bit younger and you're doing so many great things already to be able to get in the door. How old are you? I'm just going to ask.
I'm 17 years old.
Oh my gosh,
I'll be a senior this upcoming season or this upcoming year. And it was my first season this year with my license too. So now I can actually get around to more Blue Claws games and stuff.
Well, listen,
nice.
That's impressive because I don't know about you, Renee. At 17, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, and it seems like you're pretty you're pretty on top of the career path that you're looking to take.
I appreciate that. Yeah, just something with sports. I love doing all this baseball stuff, so if I could figure it out to make it a job, that'd be great.
I love this for you. Oh my goodness. So everybody make sure you give MILB Central a follow. Follow Chase Ford as well, because as Casper was mentioning, and I didn't realize how young you are either. I mean, I don't typically lead with, hey, would you like to join our show? How old are you? But I love the fact that you at such a young age, before you even got your license, had already launched a whole business model essentially to cover minor league baseball and are doing a tremendous job doing it. So Chase, hats off to you. This is like some Monday motivation here. But appreciate all the great work that you're doing as you're following you're not just following the Phillies, as you mentioned, it's the Athletics, it's every team in minor league baseball, and you are the future of baseball yourself. So thank you so much for joining us here on PHLY Phillies. Thank you so much for having me. Of course, guys, make sure you check out Chase Ford's work. I know in the chat everyone's saying how they're going to be following, and yeah, for those of you like Provolone John with a 13-year-old, Chase is raising the bar for high schoolers and middle schoolers. Get out there, start working, start covering some great baseball. But Chase, thank you again. All right, so looking around the league, that is phenomenal, actually, by the way. I didn't realize he was so young, and I'm a really bad judge of age, because I know I always get told, like, I look like I get a wide range of ages. I'm just going to say that people guess, like younger and older. So I don't like to I don't ask people their age, but the more that he was talking about his experiences, and then Casper was mentioning it in the chat, I was like, you know what, he does look a little bit young. Well, I love that he's 17 and already has launched a whole minor league baseball media outlet.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that as I was like getting ready for college, that would have been a dream.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's just not something at 17 I was ready to attack like that. So it's impressive, and a hat tip for sure to be able to kind of grow your own brand, your own media outlet from the ground up. And as he said, like if you start 4 months before a global pandemic, like it's pretty impressive. I tip of the cap to you, my friend.
Well, I love the fact, and this is something that we're trying to do as well with minor league players in general. First of all, you don't know what their future is going to hold, but it's a great opportunity. You have more access. As Chase was mentioning, you had the opportunity to go not only connect with Julio Rodriguez, his family, you're playing video games with him. Name a Major League Baseball player you can do that with.
So that's the thing. I was thinking about it.
You don't get that opportunity.
I play the show with my idiot friends, and he's playing the show with Julio Rodriguez.
Right. Like, you don't get that opportunity. So now you get a chance to connect that, connect the dots early. And now when they do take off in their career, you've been there from the beginning. You've been there from the trenches. Started with them from day one. So some updates, just to recap what happened this past weekend. The Phillies, as we talked about for the Futures game. Let me go back to it. Actually, I just lost it. Okay, for the Futures game, Aiden Miller and Justin Crawford, two phenomenal prospects. And as Chase mentioned, as we've talked about, two that could be and should be untouchables. Aiden Miller has been off to a really good start, ranked 17th in some, as high as 17th in some rankings, has potential, has a lot of power, has a lot of potential, had definitely an injury that kind of put him a little under the radar for some people, but been slashing at a 188, 286, 313 in his 21 high A games. Justin Crawford, who just got promoted, actually, is ranked as high as 12 in some outlets, has a season record of 301, 349, 438 with 6 home runs, 35 RBIs, and 27 stolen bases in 70 games. Phenomenal center fielder, has a lot of speed. Aiden Miller, a third baseman, but can also play shortstop, can also play in some other roles. He's very versatile. So two players to absolutely keep an eye on for how they've been moving. Crawford just promoted to Double A. Miller is in High A, and we've been keeping our eyes on them. And then for the draft itself, because we did have the first round Sunday nights, 74 players got selected day one of the draft. Day two kicks off today. The Phillies had 2 picks in the first day, and so that 27th pick was none other, as we talked about, Dante Nori, who has a really great story. Nori's got a story, guys. Nori actually was, as a high schooler, coming in, there's a few things here. So one, for Brian Barber, who's only drafted typically pitchers, he's picked Mick Abel, Andrew Painter. He's picked 3 hitters, an outfielder, Justin Crawford, Aiden Miller, and now Nori. And Nori has a story of a dad. I keep saying that because I feel like it's like my head. The 19-year-old's dad, let me read this correctly. The 19-year-old has a connection to Kyle Schwarber. His grandfather, Fred Nori, was an infielder that played 2 seasons professionally with the Cubs and the Mets minor league systems, then became an assistant coach at Indiana University, where he recruited none other than Kyle Schwarber. And his father, Micah, is an assistant coach with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the Nori family has a history in sports themselves. And I know Barbara was mentioning how they identified him over a year ago. He's got tools, baseball skill, top shelf defense in center field, an advanced hitting ability, and an amazing person that has a lot of potential. That's what we hear from everybody. So excited to see what that 19-year-old is, how he can progress. He did have a 4.77, 5.75, 7.48 slash line with a 1.323 OPS, 52 runs scored, 23 extra base hits, and 32 walks, 20 stolen bases in 39 games in 2024 for Northville, leading them to a championship, their first ever in 115 years. And then their second pick of the night was none other than Griffin Burkholder. Just some numbers on him. The number 63 overall pick out of Freedom High School in Virginia. He's 6'2", 195. I probably could have gave Nori's stats too. He's 5'10", 190. But Burkholder, 6'2", 195, a right-handed hitter with a 4.53, 5.97, 8.30 slash line. He went 24 for 53 with 6 doubles, 4 triples, 2 home runs with a 1.427 OPS his senior year. Another high schooler, another young talent, and they felt for Barber that he's just, icing on the cake for them. They said he's an unbelievably strong, fast, and good athlete, good baseball player who can hit and hit with power, and the type of player they always have interest in. So the Phillies do have their next pick, number 100 actually overall, today in the 3rd round. They then have 1 pick in each of the final 17 rounds, the 27th pick for each of those. That'll conclude on Tuesday. So The draft isn't overly exciting, but you never know. Aiden Miller, Justin Crawford, Andrew Painter, not too long ago, we were talking about them coming in.
Yep.
And now we're talking about them as untouchable. So just some names to keep an eye on for the future because you never know how these players are going to turn out.
I mean, listen, there's so many things about the Major League Baseball draft that make it less, I shouldn't say less important because clearly important. Make it less intriguing is probably the word that I should use. Primarily because these guys are not going to be at the highest level
right.
for, unless you get a Nolan Schanuel who just like explodes through the ranks and was probably about as close to Major League ready as anybody I've seen in a long time coming out of Virginia. Now, granted, he's really struggled this year, but last year, bat the ball type of guy, wasn't a power guy, but he's just a flat out contact hitter who you knew was going to transition upwards quickly to becoming a major league player. And it's why he was an Angel by like July last year.
Right.
Or by like August last year. But more times than not, especially with high school selections, you're looking at this guy Dante Nori specifically was selected on July 14th of 2024. To be in the major leagues, you're probably talking about July 14th of 2028.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people just like, let me know when he gets to AA type, or let me know when he gets to high A type of situation. The second thing is, as I mentioned with Chase, the Major League Baseball draft is an absolute crapshoot because you are selecting players who are I believe Major League Baseball is the furthest gap between selection of a draft pick and being on a major league field in any sport. Because if you think, again, it goes back to they're not going to be here for a while. You go to the NFL, your first round pick in the NFL not only is going to make the team, not only is going to probably be a prominent role, if you're not good, might be a starter on your team.
Yeah.
NBA, same
very
thing.
True.
There are certain players.
Very
now, this year's NBA draft wasn't very good, but there's a lot of draft classes where they're plug and play guys. Now, Reed Sheppard might be plug and play after what we're seeing in the summer league, but like they're plug and play guys that are going to be in the starting lineup. Might be a sixth or seventh man to start their time. The NHL, there's a little bit of a gap. Some guys do go right to the NHL, but some go to the AHL and whatnot. But Major League Baseball, there's 5 different rounds of minor leagues to get through.
Yeah.
And that's cut down from what it used to be. And I say 5 only on the side of the American amateur draft. There is, of course, international, developmental leagues as well. So if you think about it, you have to go through, they're either going to go through the Florida Complex League, the Directional Camp, the Florida Complex League. Then you get to high A, then you get to AA, then you might go to AAA if you're not ready for the majors yet. There's a potential of 5 steps along the way to get to Major League Baseball. So it becomes a little less exciting, come draft day. The next step, you've just took a 19-year-old kid who has primarily played baseball against other 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, most of which are not going pro.
Nope.
Also, you have a metal bat. There's a lot of things in becoming
and
involved.
Like Flyers in 7 is saying, it is wild that you start proving it after you get drafted.
Right.
So 28 of the top 100 prospects in this year's class were picked in the first round. And so there's a lot that are still remaining on the board, so we'll see what happens. There was some history made as Travis Bazzana was drafted first overall by the Cleveland Guardians, their first time ever having the number 1 pick, and the first time ever a player born in Australia was taken top of the board. I also saw, I think it was in total 8 different players that were drafted were black players. So we're seeing more diversity. We're also seeing some change in the talent pool of who's being drafted. And as we're talking about how players pan out, I just saw on my phone, I just got a notification from Major League Baseball because they've been actively tweeting about Livy Dunn, about her and Paul Skeens on their private jet headed to the All Star games. So we have a lot of people from the Phillies headed to the All Star games, 8 in total that were invited because Christopher Sanchez was added to the roster this past weekend. That does tie a Major League record, with 8 All Star selections. They tied the 2023 Braves, the 2012 Rangers, 2010 Yankees, the 2008 Cubs, 2004 Yankees, 2001 Mariners, and 1961 Yankees. A lot of overlap teams from that list that we read earlier of teams that had over 60 wins heading into the break. So with 5 pitchers, that's also a record across Major League Baseball. The previous was 4. That was accomplished multiple times. And it's exciting for Christopher Sanchez, who a year ago was just in the Grapefruit League. And I know Matt Gelb put a piece out that a year ago, Sanchi had the goal of making the All-Star game. And here he is in 2024, headed with Jeff Hoffman, Matt Strom to the All-Star game as pitchers. Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez are not making the trip, and we do have injury updates on them. But it is a great moment for these guys to be able to go, have some fun, get their first nod, and be able to represent the Phillies.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about it. This is a really good baseball team and deserving. All these guys are deserving of being All-Stars. This is obviously your starters are voted, and it's primarily a popularity contest. Mm-hmm. I will say this, though, Renee. I think for the most part, there are a couple of guys that I looked at that I think objectively probably should have been All-Star starters that are not. But I think of the 18 All-Star starters between the American and National League, I think the public got like 15 of them right.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
And you have to have every team represented.
Right. So, you know what I mean? Like when you're voting, a lot of times you go, okay, I know Bryce Harper, I'm voting for Bryce Harper. I know Shohei Ohtani, I'm voting for Shohei Ohtani. I know in years past, it's always like, I know Mike Trout, I'm voting for Mike Trout.
Right.
But like the guys this year that like, that you want to vote for because they're faces of the league, for the most part, they're the guys that were deserving, right? Like
exactly.
If Mookie Betts doesn't get hurt, Mookie Betts is your All-Star shortstop. Yeah, deserving of being it, right?
That's the thing. It's a popularity contest, but it's guys that talent-wise and statistically deserve to be there.
Right. So like there's a couple of spots where you could argue, but it's arguing amongst good player. It's not like I said I voted for Nick Castellanos because I like him and he all of a sudden became an All-Star right fielder. Like the argument was like Gunnar Henderson versus Bobby Witt.
Right.
Pretty darn good comp. The other one at third base, Jose Ramirez, Rafi Devers. Mm-hmm. Both guys deserving of being All-Stars. Both guys end up making. Did Devers make the team? I think Devers was selected as a bench player. But regardless, both could have been the All-Star starter. I think for the most part, the public did a really good job this year. They
did. And honestly, there are players that were right on the cusp. Someone like an Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola will start the Phillies' first game out of the break against Pittsburgh. Some updates for you guys on the injury front, though, because as we're talking about the All-Star break, Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez, who were both invited, are not going to attend at all. So Zach Wheeler, we know he left with back pain. It was back spasms that were causing the problem when he left Tuesday's game. So he is going to be out. Ranger Suarez also dealing with back pain. Now, neither of them are going to be placed on the IL because the Phillies aren't expecting them to miss time, especially because we were at the break.
Right.
And that is the encouraging part. For each of them, the timeline is this. They're expected to start in the second series back. They will not be playing against Pittsburgh. They're expected to be ready against Minnesota. Zach Wheeler played catch in the outfield Sunday morning before the game. And then for both of them, of course, with a 4-day break, they're going to ease themselves back, take some time to rest. For Ranger Suarez, his back tightness, he said he's not concerned. He thinks that a couple of days of rest will do and that he'll be back healthy and ready for the second half of the season. It's a shame because he does, of course, wish he had a chance to play in the All-Star game, but he said he felt pinching in his back during Friday's start. We knew something was off. His velocity of his sinker was a career low, around 90 miles per hour. The 2 innings that he really struggled, especially that third inning, it was not the usual Ranger Suarez. And now we know why. His command was off, why he's been struggling, why his numbers have been dipping. And he's been dealing with a pinching and back tightness for him. So the other side of it, as we talked about Friday postgame, this is the most that Ranger has pitched through this point of the season pretty much in his career. He is 52 innings ahead of where he was at this time last year. And as we talked about, there's only 4, I think was the final number we found, 4 seasons since he's already at 114 innings pitched. There's only 4 seasons total he's pitched more than 114 innings.
Sure.
So where Ranger Suarez is at now makes complete sense that he's dealing with a little bit of a nagging injury and a little drop off in his career because he's in uncharted territory. And yes, his ERA went from a 1.75 to a 2.76. Oh man. But now this is a great chance for him to get healthy and get back. JT Realmuto is expected to be activated in Minnesota. He will not most likely be ready against Pittsburgh, Rob Thompson said. Spencer Turnbull is going to be out at least until August with that lat strain. He is making progress. And then Taijuan Walker, who's still dealing with that blister, he's actually getting back into his rehab assignment. So he threw a bullpen session Saturday, Rob said he looked great. He is scheduled to have another bullpen session Wednesday in Arizona, where he lives. And then he's going to get back to a nice rehab assignment that will have multiple starts on a rehab assignment before returning to the Phillies rotation. So the expectation that we might see is a 6-man rotation at times in August and September as they're trying to make sure to get these guys back healthy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense as you're trying to get Taijuan Walker back. The Turnbull injury, you talked about a timeline. It's almost a little bit more concerning to me than I initially felt like it would be.
Yeah, it's taking a little longer than I thought.
think you're going to see Tyler Phillips get some starts along the way. You might see some bullpen games along the way as well. I would be hard pressed to see Michael Mercado gets a start quickly after the last two or last two outings.
They might call somebody
else
up instead, to be honest.
It's certainly
and
plausible.
Give somebody else a chance.
I think your other option will be Colby Allard.
Colby Allard does have a 3.09 ERA, 33 strikeouts, 7 walks in his last 32 innings. He was on my top of my list.
And so I think he's probably your other choice. Talking about Ranger for a second. So assuming most starters make about 32 starts a year, he has 13 more to go before the season ends. If he would have to pitch 6 2/3 on average per start to reach 200 innings. We talked about the 200 inning mark at the beginning of the year. I'm not certain he makes it to 200 innings this year. I think they're probably going to ease him back in a little bit. You might see a couple of 5-inning starts to, post All-Star break. Even if he's pitching well, you might just see like a slow progression back towards ramping him back up. But so I don't think he gets to 200, but I think he probably gets to 180 to 185.
I think given his history, I think you're right.
That's a significant jump.
It is a major jump. It's a major jump. I mean, the last, what was it, 20, what year was that? He pitched 156 innings.
No, it was 155 in 2022.
155. Yeah, like he notoriously is under 150. That's the most he's ever pitched. So we're not talking about jumping from 180 to 200. Like you're jumping 50 innings that you're going to be pitching more.
And in reality, it's 75 if you're just thinking about last year.
Yes. And if you're looking at how much he's pitched already, he's gone 7, 8, 9 innings at times to have complete games and all that he's done so far. He's also like moving faster in the start of the season. Like I think they're going to have to slow walk this a little bit more.
I think you're right.
As much as we've talked about it, they've talked about the same thing. He is in uncharted territory. He's not at the same spot in terms of like Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, who are used to pitching more and know how to manage it a little bit better. So I think you are right that we're going to see Ranger possibly get pulled a little bit quicker as the season progresses. And then last thing I do want to give you guys as we leave as a positive, because we're going to end this on a positive note. Trea Turner is a huge positive as we wrap up the show here. I know we're already over time, but this is like your bonus time. Let's get a little positivity as we end. Trea Turner has returned back with phenomenal numbers. So he also is, of course, going to the All Star game, well deserving. Despite the ugliness to end the first half of the season, Trea Turner came back and ended the first half phenomenally. So Trea Turner is absolutely making a case for being NL Player of the Month for June. Or July, excuse me. He's up to 11 home runs on the year with 8 home runs and 20 RBIs in his last 13 games. He definitely has been. The numbers have progressed. He's been on pace for just, if he can continue this, giving us that post-August Trea Turner for the remainder of the season. And I know we had talked about it a little bit on Friday, just some other numbers for you. For Trea Turner, going into Friday or after Friday's game, so excluding Saturday and Sunday, across 10 games, he had 18 hits, 6 home runs, 17 RBIs, putting himself in a 10-game span of historic players. Cy Williams in 1923 accomplished that feat. Chuck Klein did it 3 seasons. Mike Schmidt did it in 74. Bobby Abreu in 05. Ryan Howard in 06. There are a few Phillies.
I've heard of those guys.
Few Phillies that have ever been able to, across 10 games, have 18 or more hits, 6 or more home runs, 17 or more RBIs. Trea Turner, coming out of his injury, has been phenomenal. He had 3 home runs in 45 games prior to July, and since then, he's been phenomenal. His numbers, his batting average, everything's been really good to see. It's nice to see how Trea Turner has returned from injury to have just a great offensive production. He still makes some errors defensively, which I'm wondering when that's going to change.
It won't.
But 8 home runs and 20 RBIs in his last 13 games, and you had 3 home runs total prior to July. Since that 6-week injury, he's come back and really hit the ground nicely.
Yeah, I mean, you signed Trea Turner to be an offensive force, and the defense would be what it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, the last 2 years has probably been two of his worst defensive seasons compared to the years with Washington and LA. But I'll leave you with this. He's 238 at bats this year. He has 83 hits. Now, do I expect Trea Turner to hit 350 over the course of another 240 at bats? Tough to say. It's probably really going to be really difficult to do so. But if you double up his at bats over the course of the next, let's say, 80 games or 70 games or however many are left, and he ends up with a number of 576 at bats, he'll finish, if he doubles up his hits, with 166 hits. He had 170 hits last year in 639 at bats, which means that in 150 less at bats this year, comp to last year, he'll finish with 4 less hits.
Man. And after missing 6 weeks, a lot of players would need time to get back, and Trea Turner has not. He hit the ground running. He hasn't missed a beat. He's actually been better since coming back. Rested, locked in, great at bat, settling in nicely, and as he's talked about, not trying to do too much and just letting the game unfold. So great to see that.
Average 80 points higher, OBP 75 points higher, slugging almost 100 points higher, about 90-ish points higher.
Insane.
OPS is 170 points higher than last season.
So there is your dose of positivity as we wrap up the show, because the Phillies are still the best team in baseball with 62 wins heading into the All Star break. The next closest is 58, and those are 3 teams in the AL. So tonight we've got the excitement of the Home Run Derby. Our very own Alec Bohm is participating. Everybody gets paid to participate, so I'm all for Alec.
Can I participate?
At the very least, you get a check.
I'm going to hit 0.
You get to have some fun.
I'll hit 0, but if you give me the money.
Somebody else might hit 0 too. Who knows? But they're getting paid to play. Competing, we've got Alec Bohm, who actually has the least amount of home runs for everybody competing, with 11 going into this. Bobby Witt Jr., your BFF Bobby, has 16 homers. Jose Ramirez comes in with 23. Marcell Ozuna with 26. Teoscar Hernandez with 19. Gunnar Henderson with 27. Adolis Garcia with 17. And Pete Alonso with 18, along with Alex 11. For the record, I see a number of my fantasy team guys on this list. Just a little plug.
Gosh, I've been
my
back like
team,
45 minutes.
I should be getting bonus points for the amount of my players. Like Corey Seager just got called into the All-Star game. That's my guy.
Nope.
I should get bonus points because half of the All-Star players are basically on my fantasy team.
All right, anyway, who you got winning?
With the new rules that they have rolling out and all this excitement, I'm going to go with a little bit of an underdog here. I'm not going to go with the front runners of like a Gunnar or Marcell. I'm going to go Jose Ramirez.
Okay.
He's not too much of an underdog.
I am going to take the guy who's doing it in his home ballpark. I'm going to take grown man strength, Adolis Garcia.
Oh, yeah.
He's plus 410. One of two things are going to happen. He's either winning the whole thing or he's losing in the first round. That tends to happen. I will take Adolis Garcia to win this.
Okay. Pete Alonso could be another one that's a sleeper that makes some noise. So we'll see. The last champion was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We'll see who wins it for 2024. We'll be recapping tomorrow. Yes, Frank, it's been 0 days. And yes, Hannah, to your point, Jose Ruiz is a great innings eater for the Phillies. We're going to continue unpacking a lot around the Phillies this week. We've got nothing but time. No games until Friday. So don't you worry. We're going to be taking a look at how the first half of the season went, ironing out the details and looking with a fine-tooth comb at all that's happened with the Phillies bullpen, starting pitchers, hitting, offensive production, all the little things. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today with our guest, Chase Ford from MLB Central. Make sure to give him a follow. A great up-and-coming talent in the baseball world. For Bree, Tyler, myself, Renee, we'll be back here live again tomorrow, 11 a.m., continuing to recap the first half of the season, the Home Run Derby, and looking ahead to the All-Star game. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on PHLY Phillies.